All right, let's get into some labor union news. Ladies and gentlemen, here it is. The U.S. railway companies and unions have reached a tentative agreement.
The railway companies and the unions have reached a tentative deal that could prevent what would likely have been an economically and politically disastrous strike. Now, talks, I'm told, lasted 20 hours. The president himself calling in around 9 p.m. last night to stress that any shutdown would have been catastrophic for the economy, saying they will get better pay, improved working conditions, and peace of mind around their health care costs, describing that as all hard-earned. But the president is also describing this as a victory for the railway companies, who will be able, he says, to retain and recruit more workers. George.
Now, this is coming for months and months and months, by the way. Here's a much earlier news source about this railroad talks that were slated to be had a long ass time ago, from all the way back in June and July. They were talking about this, and I remember, if I recall correctly, didn't Biden actually break this down by weaponizing the DPS? Rank and file has not actually voted for this yet, so it's only a tentative agreement. The media is celebrating it like a dub, but the rank and file, from what I understand, is not exactly happy about the concessions made because they're not enough. I will talk to you about the details in a second. But railroad contracts talks remain deadlocked after more than 2 years of negotiations, so President Joe Biden will likely soon have to appoint a board to help settle the dispute. The National Mediation Board determined Tuesday that mediation isn't working in the joint talks that cover roughly 140,000 workers in 13 unions at the biggest freight railroads. They deliver the raw materials many companies rely on. We're talking pesticides. We're talking fucking like shit that you need for clean water. Did I say DPS? I should have said DPA. I apologize. The Defense Production Act. The federal law that governs the contract that talks says arbitration is the next step, but both sides have to accept that the unions have said that they won't. Even Newsmax themselves were shocked to learn from a railroad worker that they do not have, they don't seem to get paid time off. We're gonna talk about this in a second, though. We're gonna get into the details. I just wanted to cover the liberal media side of it first. But this is something that people who cover labor news have been talking about for a while. It's been an ongoing issue. I mean, railway workers are getting absolutely fucking cumstered. But the rank and file, for the record, the rank and file are not happy about this circumstance, the contract, and even the current state of affairs. Here, we'll look at more perfect union. Update: the two largest rail unions have begun distributing strike information and FAQs to workers ahead of the Thursday night deadline for railroads and unions to reach a deal. Workers have been without a contract for 3 years and can legally authorize a strike beginning Friday. One of those two unions, Smart TD, yesterday urged congressional leaders to not intervene in the dispute and force a new contract onto workers. It is imperative the negotiations between labor and carriers be permitted to play out. Smart TD is asking supporters to write Congress with the same message America's railroaders are telling you how to write in the course. Please listen. I'm humbly asking you to let them defend themselves, just as so many workers before have done. A survey of Smart TD workers found that they overwhelmingly oppose the federal mediator's proposed deal that includes no changes to attendance policies, sick leaves, or other priorities. Nearly 8 in 10 said they want the union to reject the deal. The deal that the negotiators have put forward do not represent the interests of the rank and file. Because remember, unions themselves have an internal process of additional democracy where your union leaders are still beholden. They can end up doing a contract, they can end up negotiating a contract and bring it up to the rank and file, but the rank and file still have to vote to ratify it. And they can technically say, no, fuck no, this is not good. If they don't actually like the deal itself, then they could technically turn around and engage in the strike. There is a tentative deal that was reached this morning. This is from yesterday. But I want to hear more from the rail workers using their own words on what pushed them to the brink, okay? Because it's important to recognize this, and you're not going to get this kind of coverage. You're not going to get this kind of perspective on mainstream media that literally have brushed this aside for as long as they did, and then exclusively brought this up as a big dub for the Biden White House as soon as there was a tentative deal.
It seems intentional, like the railroad industry is intentionally trying to create an oppressive work environment so that they can reach their end goal and be able to give more money back to Wall Street.
These workers have worked now for the last 3 years throughout a pandemic, putting themselves and their families at risk. Without a raise, they have not received any pay increase during that time. At the same time, they've seen their numbers dwindle dramatically. They've also seen the highest profits in the history of railroading over that same stretch of time.
Just on duty time, you are very commonly working 80 plus hours a week. That does not include the time that you're sitting at the away from home terminal. I mean, you might be away from home, subject to the railroad, not with your family, for 120 hours in a week. In this round of contract negotiations, I believe railroad workers as a whole want 4 things: an increase in their pay, they want to keep their health insurance, They want the ability to take time off when they're sick, when they need time with their family, without being subject to an oppressive attendance policy. And we don't want to be forced to one-man crews the way the railroad wants to cram it down our throat.
If you want to taste of how rail members are reacting to the news of a deal, here's the BMWE Facebook comment section, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way employees. Why is our union post? This is rank and file. Why is our union posting like this? Like this is some kind of game-changing deal. One day is laughable. We need to strike. The paying members didn't agree to this, and better pay was demanded also. No. We wanted paid sick leave days, not unpaid. Now we still have to come to work sick because we need a paycheck. So they got unpaid days off. They're going to vote this down. What they got so far in the tentative deal is quite literally fucking a one day unpaid sick leave, which is a slap to the face of every fucking rank and file member. Now, we don't know all of the details. And here, Jonah is saying, I would like to emphasize this point. Anybody who says it's a good deal or a bad deal at this point is going off rumors and reading the tea leaves of Biden's comments or sentence fragments in the mainstream media. Members and even local presidents haven't seen the agreement yet. The main thing is that nobody knows what's in the deal. The releases that have come out are vague and confusing, and contracts come down to enforceable, clear, detailed language. It's not like you get a sick day. It's like a 100-page piece of legislation, but the vibes are bad. So what they have seen so far, the rank and file is not happy with. But we still do not know the full details of what's going on. But I will explain something to you. Here's Jeff Stein with a really helpful chart. One of the most important issues in the rail negotiations is over whether workers could secure any paid sick leave, okay? Paid sick leave. They asked for 15 and got 1. That's the one thing that we know. They got 1 day of unpaid sick leave. Here is the chart from the CEPRDC, the Center for Economic Policy and Research, showing the international comparison. Luxembourg gets 50-day for cancer, 5-day flu. The United States currently has 0, which is not surprising. Norway's at 50, 50, 50, 5 at the minimum for just the flu. These are paid sick leave days, by the way. Belgium, 5 days. Sweden, 3.2. Denmark, 5 days. Netherlands, 3.5, which is kind of a fucking idiotic thing to do, by the way. Overall, claiming that this is like a dub and that the tentative deal will be agreed on or whatever without rank and file's feedback, because it will blow up in Biden's face if they haven't actually reached an agreement and people are not happy about it.
President Biden just praising that tentative deal struck earlier this morning to avert a potential rail workers strike, calling it a big win for America. And Sam, what were workers fighting for here?
They wanted a pay raise, and they got that 24%. They're also going to get $1,000 a year bonuses. But one of the most important parts that they were hung up on was unpaid sick time. They wanted to be able to go to the doctors, take their kids to the doctors without being penalized. They were often working on a point system, and if they got too many points, they faced termination. And you have to remember, these trained conductors and engineers are often assigned to a trip last minute. They last several days, and it can take them all across the country. So it is tough for the railroad company to come up with schedules, but also really take care of their employees. But they seem to have found a deal.
This strike would have been the first in decades, as you say, crisis averted for so many Americans. How would this strike, though, have impacted the economy? What was at stake here?
$2 billion a day. Our shelves.
Not even fucking just $2 billion a day, baby. No medicine, no agricultural production. Our supply chain works in such a way that if you shut delivery down, like if you shut a fundamental plank of logistics, you shut everything down. Fucking fall apart. Remember during the Long Beach port saga, I talked about an opportunity for the dock workers to literally, and delivery drivers, like the truckers and the dock workers to personally intervene. Like it was a great opportunity for them to do contract renegotiations if they, or not contract renegotiations, but like just to threaten. Yeah, you need chemicals for oil refinement. You need fertilizer shipments. All of that stuff happens through the railways. Of course, while all of this was happening, Ben Shabibo had a fucking hot take. The entire Democratic union strategy is unions spend billions to get Democrats elected. Unions threaten to strike in advance of an election. Democrats force through an absolute sweetheart deal for unions, declare victory. You pay for it. Once again, showing his disdain for the working class. Again, a sweetheart deal is like 1 day of paid sick leave, unpaid sick leave. That's psychotic. Biden calling into a late night meeting to ball out railroad executives for intransigence on sick leave and scheduling after Bernie blocked the GOP bill to force a crap deal on workers. We keep hearing about how this pro-working class GOP that will emerge any day now. The average American would not know that we get fired for going to the doctor. This one thing has our members most enraged. We have guys who were punished for taking time off for a heart attack and COVID. It's inhumane, said Dennis Pierce of the BLET union. So just comprehend that for a moment. Like the motherfuckers that are running the backbone of this country, day in, day out, doing 24-hour doing like literally 24-hour runs. Those dudes are getting fired for not getting any sick leave whatsoever.
Part of the contract negotiations.
Here's Bernie Sanders talking about
the rail
this issue.
workers are asking for 15 paid sick days. This is not a radical idea. We are the only major country on earth that does not guarantee paid sick days. They say it would cost too much money to provide their workers with any paid sick days. They made over $20 billion in profits last year. They provide their CEOs with huge compensation packages. And here's something else that everyone should know. Last year, the rail industry spent over $18 billion not to improve rail safety, not to address the supply chain crisis in America, but to buy back its own stock and hand out huge dividends to its wealthy stockholders.
To play devil's advocate, aren't unions inherently anti-free market by forcing employers to pay above equilibrium, though through collective leverage? The profit is the obligation of private companies. There's a paradox. Not only do I want to nationalize this, I want to throw you in jail for even trying to play devil's advocate in this circumstance. The fuck do you mean the free market, dude? I mean, what you're describing is unironically another facility, a facilitation of the free market, where workers themselves are not seen as like an unshakable commodity, but instead a force that has some bargaining power. I don't know why you think these guys are just like slaves, you know? You just like, you're buying them like bags of rice. Like you're buying their labor as though it's bags of rice. Econ textbooks have fucking broken people's brains, dude. I swear to God. It's also additionally silly when we were talking about the railways, like the railroads, which is a fundamental plank of like our infrastructure. It is incredibly important for our national security. It's incredibly important for commerce to run, which is precisely why the government has to interfere. Like there is no free market. Not a single piece of the fucking railroad is at this stage created or even run by free market. It's the exact same thing. Like they took the government resources, they took the government money, and there's a private patina now on top of it, but it's still absolutely something that the government has to control.
It turns out that guaranteeing 15 paid sick days to rail workers would cost the industry a grand total of $688 million a year. That is less than 3.5% of their annual profits. Now, it seems to me that if 4 major rail carriers can afford to spend over $18 billion a year on stock buybacks and dividends.
Oh my God. That kind of shows that unironically shows how inhumane these fucking scumlords are. That they can't even put 3.5% of their fucking profits that those workers created back into very reasonable demands that the workers themselves are making by way of their fucking labor unions. That is completely, by the way, profits, chat, which is of course extracted labor value that workers, without any sort of like labor union, without any sort of mechanism of pushback, have no say over. That's why unions are important. You could turn around and go, what the fuck do you mean? We generated $20 billion in profits for you. Give us 3.5% back at the very least. That's why socialists say profits are theft. Oh my Lord.
Please don't tell me they cannot afford to guarantee 15 paid sick days to their workers and allow these workers to have a reasonable quality of life, which they don't enjoy today.
Not sure if it's just being part of this community, but are labor actions becoming more and more popular and common? It's a bit of both. I think you see more of it because I cover it religiously, but I also do think that it is becoming more commonplace for workers to actually strike and ask for an additional chunk of the profits. Now, the reason for why that's happening is because one of the things that capital fears the most is a tight labor market that actually reflects the normal economic conditions within a tight labor market, where labor has a better bargaining position. Why do you think people want inflation to fucking rip dicks? Why do you think people actually also personally want workers to be poorer overall so they have less of a negotiation, less of a interest in negotiating with their bosses? You know, liberals always claim that shitty wages and working conditions are fair because of the market mechanisms, and when workers through unions apply whatever little pressure they have on capitalists, literally a market mechanism, they still shit on them. Yeah, they want the nanny state to fucking straight up immediately come in and
so
use
you know,
whatever weapons, whatever tools they have to suppress any kind of labor action. That's how this shit works. They don't want fucking free market. There's no such thing. There is no such thing as a free market in an economy that is run with subsidies, okay? What do you mean the fucking free market? The government literally dictates what kind of dairy output has to happen, okay? They normalize prices. They do this for every facet of agricultural production. There is no such thing as the free market. There is still plenty of centralized planning involved in the American free market and in the free market everywhere else, okay? Oh, I wanted to show this, by the way. Even fucking Newsmax hosts are like, what? You guys don't get paid sick leave? That's fucking crazy.
David, we did reach out to the Association of American Railroads, and they say that workers...
By the way, I love this, okay? Straight up, I'll say it. This guy's got a fucking Blue Lives Matter Punisher flag, and he's wearing the most fucking communist shirt that you could ever see. That is how unions work. That's why I was trying to tell you, it's not about left, it's not about right, it's about what's right. It's about justice, it's about the appropriate mechanism of pushback. Labor unions do not have to all be fulfilled by people who are running around and defending or trying to take away people's guns and like defending trans rights or whatever. It is completely removed from our binary understanding of American politics. And this is something that a lot of you should recognize. It doesn't fucking matter. You don't have to be a Democrat to be a union member. You don't have to be a Republican to be a union member. There's no such thing. It is just a mechanism of pushback. It is just fair, okay?
Whoever told you we get 6 days, our sick days is manipulating the data. We get paid time off that we earned the previous year before. Before the new policy came about, we were allowed to take 5 days off and 2 weekend days off a month. Now we could take virtually 1 day unpaid off a month. And then the only other time we could take off is our paid time that we had to earn the previous year.
Yeah, that does seem ridiculous. They would never let airline pilots do that. Is that issue number one? For members of the unions?
He's saying labor does not contribute to profit.
Is number one. And if we go on strike, yes, it could hurt the economy. It could be bad for society, but we don't want to do that. None of us want to do that.
Well, and I know Amtrak's already suspended.
We're not asking for the world here. We're asking for a few days off a month to spend with our family instead of living on a train.
It's sarcastic. Like, I don't see the full labor does not contribute to profits is a sarcastic take. Either it's a sarcastic take, I don't know the full shirt. Either it's an ironic shirt that he's wearing, or it's literally it's in quotes. So I assume it's like an ironic shirt that one of these fucking dickheads said, like a quote by one of these like rail executives probably said, right? Because the entire point, and this is something that they teach you in when you join a union, something that you learn immediately, is the classic take that you've probably heard here time and time again. There is no value without labor. Labor is what provides value. If you don't have labor, you don't have value. So that's the irony of that shirt. Oh, here it is. The worker shirt is referencing a recent federal mediators report which summarized the negotiation position of the railroads. The carriers maintain that capital investment and risk are the reasons for their profits, not any contributions by labor. There you go. And without labor, and this is hilariously out of touch, without labor, you're fucked. You can try to like massage the numbers all you want all day. But without the fucking driving engine, there is no value. There is no profits whatsoever. There is no value whatsoever because labor is the only thing that creates value. Even if you fucking automated every part of this, process, there's still labor that has to oversee the automation. That's how it works. Without a human being touching the buttons, which is labor, you are not going to be able to run the fucking trains. This is perhaps the most fundamental part of the socialist indoctrination or the socialist understanding is the recognition of the reality that without labor, there is no value. These capitalist dogs might have fucking broken their brains for staring at numbers far too long in front of a fucking Bloomberg terminal, thinking that they are the ones who are generating profit, actually. Massaging the fucking numbers is actually the real thing that's generating profit. Stock buybacks and this sort of thing is actually what is improving shareholder value. Okay, well, you have no shareholder value without labor. That's how it goes.
240 to 260 hours a month sitting on these trains or sitting at the hotel rooms away from our families.
That's a lot.
When I leave my house to go to work, I'm gone for at least 2 to 2.5 to.
By the way, you fucking see a hog like this, go on Newsmax and put the fucking Blue Lives Matter sticker behind it, and look how agreeable he comes across to the Newsmax hosts. All of this, American politics is just a dance of aesthetics, dude. It's just straight up. If you looked a little gay, okay, immediately they'd be like, shut up, SJW libtard, shut the fuck up. You don't deserve it. All aesthetics, no substance. Well, it doesn't matter because the substance is within the argument that he is making, okay? The substance is is inherent within even the shirt that he's wearing. Okay, that's where the real substance comes from.
3 days.
I didn't realize that, David.
And then I come home, and I'm only allowed to be home for 10 hours.
Wow.
And then I could be called to go right back to be gone for 3 days.
You have a family?
Yes.
Kids?
My kid is 17 years old.
Wow.
A lot of people are wondering why the railroad is facing a strike. It's not money, folks. That's been ironed out already. Quality of life issues. About 50% of railroaders are on call 24/7 unless they're on personal time or already at work. We don't have a schedule. There isn't one. We are on call. After 16 years, I get 3 weeks vacation and 9 personal days a year. That's it. About 30 days. And the railroad wants that to be scheduled. How do you schedule a funeral in October if it's only in February? Schedule for a wedding that hasn't been announced. Schedule to take your spouse to the doctor. Most people get 2 days a week off. With 52 weeks, that's 104 plus days plus 2 weeks. So that equals 118 days off over the year. I get 30 for the year. The railroad is trying its best to make us look like the bad guys here, but we're not. We just want to see our family and live a little. That's fucked up, man. How dare they?